Today we're going to start a lesson on integers, and we're going to get started with adding integers. And I wanted to start with the trickiest one, which is adding a positive number plus a negative number, because this is the one that people get the most confused about. So as an example, we're going to start with 5 plus negative 3. And so we don't need to put a positive sign in front of a 5. A 5 is a positive. Anything above a 0 will always be a positive. But when we have a negative number, we will always put a negative sign, and usually we put it in brackets so that it's easier to understand what sign is in front of that number. So we've got positive 5 plus negative 3. So what we need to do is something that everybody knows how to do, is we need to subtract. We're like, what? We're adding. Yeah, but we need to subtract. And all we're doing is at this moment is we're taking the largest number and subtracting the smallest number. So 5 minus 3 equals 2. Perfect. Okay, that was easy. And so the next thing we do is, okay, now this 2 is going to have the sign in front of the highest number. So let's take a look at my little pen here, and we're going to just change the color so that we can do a little bit of highlighting. And so when we look at our numbers, we notice that which of the two numbers is the highest? Well, the 5 is the highest. This is why we subtracted the 3 from the 5. And what sign does this 5 have? Does it have a negative sign in front of it? No, it doesn't have a negative sign in front of it. Then it's a positive number. And like I said, positive doesn't have to have a sign in front of it because positive are the numbers that we always know. So if we look at the rule that when we add a positive plus a negative, the result will always have the sign of the greatest number. Well, the greatest number here is 5, and it's a positive, which means that our answer is positive 2 or 2. You don't have to put the positive sign in front of it, like I said. Okay, let's have another example. What if we had negative 5 plus 3? And by not having the negative sign in front of the 3, we know it's a positive number. Forget about this. This is not the sign of the number. This is just the operation that we're doing. We're adding, okay? So if there's no little negative sign beside the 3, we know that 3 is positive, okay? So if we've got negative 5 plus positive 3, what do? Same thing we always do. We're just going to subtract the smallest number from the greatest number. Forget about the sign at this moment. So what is 5 minus 3? 2. Okay, so we got 5, take away 3, we have a 2. Okay, so according to the rule is our result has to have the sign of the greatest number. Okay, so which of the two is greatest? Which is highest? The 5 or the 3? The 5. And what is the sign in front of the 5? It's a negative. So therefore, our answer is negative 2. Okay, let's do one more. So let's do, 7 plus negative 2. Okay. Step number 1, forget about the signs. We're going to subtract the smallest number from the highest number. So what is 7 minus 2? Well, 7 minus 2 is a 5. Great. Got that number right. Now we look at the sign. Okay. So our highest number, what is it? It's a 7. Okay, this is our highest number. And is the 7 a positive number or a negative number? It's a positive number. Therefore, our answer is positive 5, or just simply 5, because I said you don't have to actually put the sign in front of a positive number. What if the signs were different? What if we had negative 7 plus 2? Well, same thing. We're going to subtract the smallest number from the highest number. So 7 minus 2, which is 5. And we look at the sign of the greatest number. So which one was greater, the 2 or the 7? The 7 is greater. And what's the sign? It's negative. So the answer is negative 5. Now what if we had our numbers like this? 2 plus negative 7. What do we do then? What's the same thing? The steps don't change. We just grab our greatest number, we subtract the smaller number. So in this case, we've got our 7, we subtract the 2, it's still going to be 5, and we keep the sign of the greatest number, which is the 7, and it's a negative, so it's -5. Okay, now let's look at adding two negative numbers. So what if we have a negative plus a negative? A negative plus a negative is always a negative. So if we've got -3 plus -2, we're going to add the numbers 3 plus 2 and keep the sign. So they're both negatives. That means our sign will always be negative, and we've got a 5. What we have a -5 plus a -1. Again, we're just adding the numbers, so we're not subtracting here. We're adding the numbers 5 plus 1, which is 6, and we're keeping the sign because they're both negative. Negative plus a negative is always a negative. Again, one more. What if we have -10 plus -2? Well, 10 plus 2 is 12, and we keep the sign, and the sign's a negative. Always. -10 plus -2 is -12. A negative plus a negative is always a negative. Okay, now we've got positive plus a positive. So positive plus a positive. A positive plus a positive is always a positive. And this is what you've always done all through grade school, which is adding positive numbers. 3 plus 2 equals 5. Now you'll notice that we don't have to put a positive sign in front of the numbers when they're positive because they're positive. There's no need to show that they're positive. Only when it's a negative number, we need to actually put a little negative sign in front of them. But in this case, you don't have to actually put a positive sign in front of them. Okay, we got 5 plus 3. So 5 plus 3, that's easy, it's 8, and you'll notice it's a positive 8. It's not a negative 8 because we're adding a positive plus a positive. Now, make sure you don't confuse this sign right here as the sign that pertains to the number beside it. Now, this is just our operations. This is what it's telling us what we're doing. We're adding. Okay, so always remember, this sign just means you're adding right there, okay? And we're adding two positive numbers because we don't have a sign in front of them. Therefore, they're both positive. If we've got a 6 plus 3, we know that's 9, and it's positive 9. So sometimes, you can actually go and say, okay, it's positive 9 if you're actually working through your integers unit and you want to show that it's a positive, but you don't have to. It's known that if it doesn't have a sign in front of it, it's always going to be a positive number. So in this case, 6 plus 3 is positive 9. You can put it this way or you can put it this way without the sign. It means the same thing. Okay, so what if we have this equation, positive 5 plus -3 plus 2 plus -1. So we've got quite a large equation here. And so what we do is we're going to use BEDMAS. And there will be another unit to talk about BEDMAS, which is order of operations. But technically what this means is we're just going to go from left to right. We're just going to go step by step, one at a time. So the first part that we're going to do is the first two numbers. So it's positive 5 plus -3. Okay, so positive 5 plus -3, and so we're grabbing the 5 and we're subtracting a 3 from it, and we've got a 2. And we said we keep the sign of the greatest number. What is the sign of the greatest number? It's a positive because the greatest number between the two is the 5, and the 5 is a positive. So that means that 2 is going to be positive. Now we're going to bring down this part right here. I like to do things step by step. So let's do plus 2 plus -1. Again, let's deal with one step at a time. Our next step is to add the next two numbers. So we've got positive 2 plus positive 2, which is positive 4, or just 4. Okay, so we put the 4. Now let's bring the rest down. Plus negative 1. All right. And so now we've got positive 4 plus negative 1. So we grab 4, we subtract 1. That gives us 3. And we take the sign of the greatest number. Which one is the greatest number? The 4. And what is the sign? It's a positive. So our answer is positive 3, or just 3. Like I said, you don't have to put that sign. Okay, let's practice one final question. And so we've got negative 8 plus negative 2 plus 5 plus negative 2. So like I said, let's do this in steps. So we'll focus on the first part here, which is negative 8 plus negative 2. So we said when we're adding two negative numbers, we're just going to add them and keep the sign. So 8 plus 2 is 10, and our sign is a negative, so we've got a negative 10. Now we're bringing down these two so that we can continue rewriting our question. So we've got negative 10 plus 5 plus negative 2. Okay, so we'll focus on the next two numbers here. And so we've got a negative 10 plus 5. So that's a positive 5. So we said when we have a negative and a positive, we're going to subtract. So we're going to subtract 5 from 10 because 10 is the largest number. So 5 from 10 is 5. And we keep the sign of the largest number. So in this case, the largest number is a 10. So this is a negative 5. Now let's bring down the next part. And our final section is, okay, so we've got negative 5 plus negative 2. So they're both negative, which means we're adding them together. We have a 7, and we keep the sign, which is a negative. So it's negative 7. So I like to do it in steps because I find that that is much easier and we are less likely to mix up our signs. Obviously, you can always do it in one single step if you can do that in your head, or just jump right to the end. But I think it's always good to keep them in little sections so that it's easier. We don't mix up the signs, and we make sure that at the very end we always have the right sign.